What's going on, everybody? C4 here. Welcome back to the channel. And today, kind of going back to the grassroots on the channel here a little bit. We're talking about the Eagles. This is just going to be a straight-up Eagles video, coming off the tails of last night's victory over the Giants, which was, if you don't like that game, you don't like NFC East football. But Philly, 2-4-1, first place in the division. Feels good. You know, it feels like Philadelphia Eagle fans are kind of divided. There's a side of Eagle fans that want Philly to just suck, get a high draft pick. This year's pretty much a write-off. Or there's the side of fans that's like, I want to win at all costs. Let's make the playoffs. And if you know me, you know that I'm on the side of let's make the playoffs. Let's see. Anytime we go in the playoffs, there's a chance. There's a twinkle in Doug's eye that like, are we going on the Cinderella run? I'd rather at least have that versus having to see the Cowboys or the Giants or something like that in the playoffs. And if it comes down to a draft pick, I don't think there's any difference between Philly picking closer to 10 or picking closer to 20. I do not trust Howie Roseman's talent evaluation and drafting ability either way. So for me, it's a null and void point. I just want to make the playoffs. But with the trade deadline about 2 weeks away, Philadelphia is always one of the most consistently active teams in the NFL. At the trade deadline, I wanted to break down 10 players, some on the Eagles, some around the league, that I think could potentially be up for grabs for the Philadelphia Eagles, or could be on the selling block, could be on the trade block for the Philadelphia Eagles. So let's get into it. So first, we'll start with 3 players that we need to talk about if you're talking about the trade deadline with the Philadelphia Eagles. And we'll start at number 10, and I'm going to Kel Robbie Coleman. I was told that this guy was an elite player. I was told that he's one of the best slot corners in the NFL. Madden told me this, PFF told me this, and he played slot, I feel like, for the first game or two for the Eagles, and he wasn't overly impressive. And now, because of injuries and really the fact that Philadelphia has built this secondary with Darius Slay, who's actually been awesome, maybe a couple too many penalties, but generally speaking, Darius Slay has been very good, as advertised. But the rest of the secondary slot guys. Vontae Maddox, slot. NRC, slot. LeBlanc, slot. I don't know what we're expecting to happen, putting slot corners on the outside, but Kel Robbie Coleman's been playing out of position, 16 tackles and a pass breakup. Clearly not an outside corner. And if you watch the meme play from last night's game between the Eagles and Giants, where Daniel Jones had that run where literally he was like the fastest QB run ever. And then he literally was running too fast for his body. He was like Bo Jackson. He was just too athletic for his body at that given point. But either way, you can just see Kel Robbie Coleman pretty much giving up on the play. There was no effort there. I think that's kind of writing on the wall, personally. I'd just be looking around, looking at teams in the AFC in particular that might need a slot corner. And I'd say, hey, give me a 6th, 7th round pick, and he's yours. I feel like at this point in time, it's time to move on. And it's not like, oh, well, if we move on from him, who's going to play on the outside? Doesn't matter. Just put in one of the other slot corners that we have. We'll be just as bad. If it's the badness cover that if we get rid of Robbie Coleman, it's still gonna be there. So we'll be fine. There'll be no harm, no foul for this defense. So he'd be a guy that I'd be trying to see if we can move on from and get some sort of late round draft pick. Going to number 9, I just had to address this. This is not, I don't think this trade's gonna happen, but I couldn't make this video without seeing this in the comments if I didn't talk about it, and that's Shawn Jeffrey. So for a lot of these contracts, just to make it simple, I'm just gonna use their average contract hit, because I don't know what they traded him at the trade deadline, necessarily how much money and dead cat, all that stuff. So Shawn Jeffrey, on average, has a 2-year deal that he gets paid around $13 million a season. That's pretty expensive. That's like, at this given point in the market, that's like legit wide receiver 1 money. It's not elite wide receiver 1 money, but it's legit. Is he holding out for a trade as well? Seems like every week, Shawn Jeffrey's kind of practicing, and then as close as it comes to game time, something pops up. An illness, a knee, a foot, a toe, turf toe, or something stupid like that. So I don't know if he's holding out, doesn't want to play, but there is zero trade value in Shawn Jeffrey. Unless there's some sort of weird cap manipulation where Philadelphia can trade him while holding on to the salary cap, why would any team in their right mind want to get a super expensive, unavailable wide receiver? It just doesn't make sense. And I just think it makes the most sense for Philadelphia to get him out there. Unless there is something where he's holding out for a trade that we don't know yet in the public eye. The last time Shawn Jeffrey was healthy, him and Carson Wentz went for like over 100-some yards against the Miami Dolphins in a game that I pretty much have tried to erase from my memory because it's one of the worst losses I've ever seen. So Shawn Jeffrey healthy, has confidence with Carson Wentz. There's a rapport there. And I think, honestly, if we can have an Alshon, Fulham, Jalen Reagor wide receiver core with a little bit of Greg Ward mixed in the slot, I'd be for that. I'd be all for it. So I just think we're talking about Shawn Jeffrey because I think it's literally impossible for Philadelphia to trade him. There's no trade value whatsoever to any team around the NFL. And if you're at a team around the NFL that needs a wide receiver, you probably are going to be able to find a cheaper or better option than Shawn Jeffrey. And hell, Philadelphia's a team that very well could be looking to trade for a wide receiver. And even they probably like, we don't really want Shawn Jeffrey either. So it just doesn't make sense to trade him because who would trade for him? And then last but not least, at number 8, my last Philadelphia Eagle is Zach Ertz, a man that is very well known. He's not happy with his contract situation, and he wants to get paid more money. And this year, he's looked incredibly washed. He looks incredibly lackadaisical. Looks like he's checked out. I would trade him. I would have traded him last year when there's rumors that maybe we could flip him to the Jacksonville Jaguars for Jalen Ramsey. I would have done that. But here's why. Here's why. First of all, the fact that he wants a race. The fact that he sees Kittle and the fact that he sees Travis Kelce and he's trying to use his reputation with Philadelphia to get paid up into that tier. Hey, no, that's overstepping your boundaries there, son. Because you are not a George Kittle. You are not a Travis Kelce. Those guys are 1 and 2. There's a gap, and then there's now the guys that are one-dimensional, like Zach Ertz, like Darren Waller, for example. So unless you're a complete tight end, you're not getting paid complete tight end money. I think Zach Ertz's contract is fair. I think when you look at Zach Ertz, the most important thing, in my opinion, for a tight end is you want to be the safety net for your quarterback. You want to be that reliable chain mover, and that is what Zach Ertz might be the best at in the NFL, at any tight end. You might actually, I probably would say that. If you're just using and grading a tight end from that scope of like, what is the number one tight end at getting open and moving the chains, which is incredibly valuable. I'd probably say I'd put Ertz ahead of Kittle and Travis Kelce. But then you look at everything else, and it's overwhelmingly in favor of those complete tight ends. Kittle and Ertz can block. Kittle and Kelce can block. Kittle and Kelce are athletic enough to win downfield. Zach Ertz is just not that. So the fact that he wants a raise and Philadelphia has no money to really give him the raise, nor should they absolutely need to trade it. He should be gone. Now there's an injury right now that's kind of making things a little bit tough for the Zach Ertz trade, but let's look at like if Philadelphia give him what he wants, because Zach Ertz is a legend. Zach Ertz is, sorry, Brent Selleck, the best tight end we've ever had. Zach Ertz has broken records and all this stuff. But if you give Zach Ertz an extension, right, we'll just say, I don't know, 2-3 year extension. There's going to come a point, probably a year or two into that extension, where Zach Ertz's play is no longer going to be worth that money. And we're going to be sitting here being like, okay, this kind of sucks. And then on top of that, when that time happens, you're going to have Dallas Goedert here, who is built more like a complete tight end. There is more of a comparison between Dallas Goedert to a Kittle to a Kelce than there is really with Zach Ertz, because Goddard's a really good run blocker. Dallas Goedert's a good athlete. There's a reason why we run tight end screens, because we trust Dallas Goedert to be able to make guys miss, to be able to make plays downfield, athletically to make plays. So there's going to come that point in time where we're unhappy with that extension that we may give Ertz. And then it's going to be like, oh, well, Goedert needs a contract, or he's going to go to free agency, and we don't have that money. There's going to be that cutoff point where, personally, trade Zach Ertz. Get whatever value you can get. Maybe get a player-for-player trade and commit that Dallas Goedert is the future at tight end here on this team. I think that is the move I would be made. In terms of potential suitors, I think there's more than enough. You could look at the Patriots need a tight end. You could look at the Jags are still looking for a tight end. You could look at... I had another really good one off the top of my head. But either way, there's a bunch of teams that absolutely... The Jets need a tight end. Absolutely a bunch of teams that would love a Zach Ertz. Jets, if they're getting Trevor Lawrence, get literally the safest safety net for him for his rookie year, for his first couple of years in the league in Zach Ertz. That's actually a perfect match. They have the salary to be able to pay him too. But move on from Zach Ertz. 100%. He is on the trade block, and I'm actively shopping him. So those are the 3 Eagles that I think I would be trying to look to move on from. Who are the remaining 7 players that I think we should kick the tires, see what the availability is? Or also, I'll give you my take on a lot of popular players that I'm seeing linked with the Eagles. So these top players are not necessarily all guys I would trade for, but I wanted to get a mix of guys I personally would look at, and also players that are constantly linked with the Philadelphia Eagles, and kind of give my opinion and take on it. So first, we're going to start with a guy I think I would personally look at, and that's Eric Wilson, linebacker of the Vikings. Vikings showed with the Ngakoue trade that kind of sellers at this point. Eric Wilson's in the last year of his contract. He's on a 1-year, around $3 million deal. 37 tackles, 2 sacks, 4 TFLs, 2 picks, and a forced fumble this year. Now there is, buyer beware, he's playing right next to one of the best linebackers in the NFL. His stats could be a reflection of the fact that he plays next to Eric Kendricks. Absolutely. But I refuse to believe that there's any otherworldly scenario that Eric Wilson is not better than Nate Gary, or that he's not better than, why can't I remember this guy's name? Give me a sec. Who is that guy that we got? Eagles linebackers. I cannot remember this guy's name to save my life. Duke Riley. He's definitely better than Duke Riley, a guy that I can never remember. Singleton's looked pretty solid, but he's probably even better than Singleton. There's a very legitimate scenario, like even though there's like, hey, is Eric Wilson really that good? Or is it because he's kind of like the partner in crime to Eric Kendricks? I would be like, you're probably better than what we have. And that's like an underrated signing. Get him on a 1 year. If he's good, maybe extend him. If not, it's only a 1 year. Just seeing if he can help improve this linebacker core just enough so that we can get across that line and into the playoffs. So considering that the Vikings are sellers, Eric Wilson would be a guy that I personally would look into. These next two guys, at number 6 and number 5, are more so players I've seen linked with Philadelphia. I don't know how it really work out. At number 6, we have Ded Westbrook from the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's still on his rookie deal. Only 1 catch, 4 yards this year, so clearly not being utilized there in Jacksonville. He's really damn good coming out of Oklahoma. Has some speed to his game. Unfortunately, when I look at it for the Philadelphia Eagles, he's been primarily a slot wide receiver in the NFL. Roughly averaging around like 10 yards a catch. Not a prolific deep threat. And if you're Philadelphia, we're still searching for the deep threat. We don't need a slot guy. We don't need an underneath chain mover guy. We have that in Greg Ward and Travis Fulgham. We need really a player that consistently win downfield. And, you know, when you look at that for Philadelphia, is Ded Westbrook going to be better than Jalen Reagor once we get him back on the field? Is he going to be better than John Hightower, who, even though he's had some drops, has still been able to get a 50-yard bomb in each of the last 2 games? Is he going to be better than someone I'm a personal believer in Quez Watkins, who I think he's even faster than Hightower, and I really do think he should be getting a shot on the team. So I've seen Ded Westbrook linked a lot, and it makes sense. I think Philadelphia more or so will be trading for guys that are in a 1-year contract or still on a rookie deal, but I just don't think Ded Westbrook makes a lot of sense for the Philadelphia Eagles, outside of the fact that, yeah, he's a wide receiver that has some pretty good speed and was hyped coming out of college. Same could be said for number 5 on my list, and that is John Ross of the Cincinnati Bengals. Constantly see people thinking we should make a trade for him. He's kind of expensive. He has a first-round rookie contract. Can't stay healthy. What makes you think he would stay healthy in Philadelphia? Yes, I get the speed. Yes, I get the fact that Philly needs a deep threat. I actually think if we could get a healthy John Ross, I'd be pretty damn intrigued, honestly, about John Ross being a deep threat for this team, because he's you have Hightower and Reagor, but John Ross is in a different tier of speed. If we can, John Ross is going to be a big what if for whatever team happens to sign him, because he's most likely in his last year with Cincinnati here, because it's all going to be, can whatever team he goes to harness that speed and develop him into an NFL wide receiver? And if you can do that, you might have just a guy that's literally uncoverable because no one is really that fast. I do not trust Philadelphia to do that. Do you have any trust that Philadelphia can A, develop a receiver, and B, keep him healthy? It's just not. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. Let's just leave it at that. It's not going to work. Next up on the list at number 4. This is going to be more so in line to pair with a potential Zach Ertz trade. And I'm looking at Myles Jack. Myles Jack got a 4-year, on average, around $14 million contract with the Jacksonville Jaguars. 41 tackles, a sack, 2 TFLs, and a pick this year. But more so, you get a guy that's an incredible athlete that can cover. This is still, we'd have to give up more than Zach Ertz, but I can see Jacksonville needing a tight end. If they're truly sellers and they truly think that they can get a rookie quarterback and they need a tight end more than they need a linebacker, maybe. But I just think it's one of those things. Myles Jack recently got a new contract. This front office is probably going to be committed to Myles Jack long term. It just, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But, hey, if they're sellers and they really want and they value tight end that much more than linebacker, Philly might be able to send Ertz in a pick to try and get Myles Jack. It's just that is a lot more in a fantasy Madden realm type trade than it is more so in reality. But this is another name that I see constantly talked about and linked with the Philadelphia Eagles in terms of a potential trade. I mean, it'd be awesome. He's absolutely the type of linebacker we need, and maybe you could start to open the doors and talks of a trade if you throw in Zach Ertz, but I think it'd be a lot more than just Zach Ertz for a Myles Jack trade to happen. Same goes with number 3, Deion Jones on the Atlanta Falcons. Just kind of looking around the league, teams that could potentially be sellers. I actually think Deion Jones has a more likelihood of being sold because Dan Quinn's no longer there. They could get a DC that comes in that doesn't value necessarily the type of style of linebacker that Deion Jones is, where he's more of a kind of built like a safety, even though Debo's unreal. You have a little bit more of changing of a guard, a little bit more likelihood. I mean, they still could use a tight end. They just traded for Hayden Hurst, and he hasn't been anything special. But it'd have to be like a full-on rebuild for the Falcons for them, I think, to make a move like this. But they could. I mean, Deion Jones, very similar to Myles Jack, on average 4-year deal, getting paid around $14 million a season. So if we shifted off that Zach Ertz contract out the books, makes it that much more affordable for the Philadelphia Eagles to potentially get. 41 tackles for him, 3 TFLs, a pick, 4 pass breakups. He's probably one of my favorite linebackers in the NFL. This would be like my dream scenario. But again, Zach, I think a lot of people will be overvaluing Zach Ertz. Like, I don't think the Falcons offense is a Zach Ertz away from being able to completely flip the script. You know, they already have more than enough weapons in the passing attack that, you know, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, but if we're living in a dream fantasy world, I think Deion Jones, you know, maybe if you hit him up with Zach Ertz and some picks, you never know. You never know, but it's highly unlikely. So now that we've been talking about 4 straight players that I just, you know, you just to talk about for the sake of talking about, it feels like, I'm going to finish out this with 2 guys that I think absolutely could maybe move the needle for the Philadelphia Eagles. And at number 2, we have James Washington, wide receiver of the Pittsburgh Steelers on a rookie deal. Ben Solak, who's one of the better Twitter followers for Eagles Twitter, kind of came up with this trade, and it makes sense. Right now, 17 catches, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns for James Washington. Pretty much want everything to do with a Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver for the most part. These guys are always phenomenal. Washington, more of a, you know, when he gets the ball in his hands like a running back, has some speed to his game. I think he ran 4.35 coming out of Oklahoma State. Just kind of buried there, especially now with the emergence of Chase Claypool. You have Johnson, you have Juju. It's just, you know, a lot of mouths to feed. He's just sitting down there on the totem. And the fact that he's on a rookie deal, that's absolutely a wide receiver that I think Philadelphia should consider. He's a style of wide receiver you don't really have. He has speed on the outside. He can work across the middle because he's dangerous with the ball in his hands. I think that would absolutely be a trade that I would be inquiring on. And I think if Philadelphia wants to go to wide receiver, that is the number 1 guy. James Washington from the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then finishing up at number 1, the number 1 trade target for me personally, and that's Avery Williamson, linebacker of the New York Jets, currently on a 1-year, $4.7 million deal, 37 tackles, has an interception, 3 pass breakups, would be an immediate upgrade over really any linebacker we've had for the last 3 years. Like, you can probably maybe compare him to maybe like when Nigel Bradham, the Super Bowl year. So he can do everything. Sideline to sideline, drop back into coverage. He's a sure tackler. Jets are absolutely sellers. Philadelphia has the relationship with Joe Douglas, the GM, that they can make this trade happen. He probably would only cost you 4th, 5th round pick, somewhere in that range. And I do firmly believe that if we just get even one linebacker, one guy that we can rely on in the middle of that defense, I think he'll make everyone else around him kind of better, because then you won't have Nate Gary on certain responsibilities where he's just getting toasted every time. Or you take someone like Alex Singleton, who's a great run defender, but you just have to drop him back into coverage certain times. You could just have Avery Williamson rely on that responsibility. Maybe it would take a little bit less of Rodney McLeod inside the box, so give it a little bit more cover on the back end of the defense. That would be my move. Avery Williamson would be the one. If I can make one move for this team, even above trying to find a way to trade Zach Ertz, it would be knocking on the door of the New York Jets and saying, what do you want for Avery Williamson? Let's make this happen. You guys suck even worse than we do. We'll take his case. He's only on a 1 year. He's probably not coming back. We'll take him off your hands. So those are my top 10 trade targets there for the Philadelphia Eagles. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comment section below. If you like seeing me talk about the Eagles every now and again, maybe I can start doing a little bit more of this content on the channel, because I could do this all day. I could talk about the Eagles all damn day. But I hope you guys did enjoy. Like I said, I really want to hear what you guys think about the Philadelphia Eagles. There should be more players they should be potentially trying to ship. Should there be more players we should be trying to trade for? Let me know. As always, your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. Trying to hit 150,000 subscribers before Christmas. That'd be a nice gift. Smash that like button if you enjoyed. And until next time, it's C4 saying peace